Hello and welcome to Story Strategy Live with Evident Inc. You are watching Writing Serialized Fiction, and we hope to have a special guest today, Tamara Lush. For right now, you've got Nancy and Dawn. Hi.
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 It's us.
Yes, I'm a little fearful that I may have miscommunicated something or potentially given a wrong time. I tend to mess up this time zone thing often. So we're going to just sort of chat and we'll hope that Tamara pops up. And if she doesn't, we will reschedule our serialized fiction chat.
Yes. But we're very excited to talk about the serialized fiction because it's a really hot thing right now.
There's so many questions. And the other thing about Tamara, I don't know if you know this, if you looked at her profile or anything, but she's an Amtrak writing fellow. Do you know what that is?
No.
So I actually applied.
Oh, is that when she gets to ride on the train?
Yeah. I don't know what the stipulations are. Like, do you have to write about trains? Do you have to share your story that you wrote on the train? Like, is there proof required that you wrote this on a train? Or do you just get to go wherever you want? I don't know. But I used to take the train all the time when I lived in Maryland, because I would go up to New York City a lot to see friends and hang out and do fun city things. And it was a cool train ride. So when I saw that thing pop up, I emailed or entered or however you did it and explained to Amtrak that I would be perfect for it. And they evidently didn't agree with me. So
They didn't agree. That's sad.
But they evidently thought Tamara would be perfect because she got it. And I want to hear about that too.
I do too, because I have never been on a train.
What?
I mean, I've been on like the little choo-choo that goes around the zoo or whatever.
You were in New York? Were you on the subway?
No. I mean, I didn't. It's not that I actively avoided the subway. It's just we never got on the subway. We walked everywhere.
Okay.
And in Texas, we don't. I mean, well, I take that back. I've been on a DART train, which is like a public transportation type thing, but it's not a train. It's like two little cars that zip from one spot to another. So, but I haven't been on a subway. I haven't been on a like Amtrak. I haven't been on any of those.
I love taking the train. And my kids are dying to take a sleeper train. Like my husband would like to take one across the country. He thinks that would be fun. And I have slept overnight on a train once in Germany, going to Denmark. And it wasn't that fun, but there were other circumstances involved there that made it less fun, which I will not go into at the moment. Suffice to say, interesting story for another time. But
that sounds like an anniversary episode story when we're both.
It's probably not something I will talk about live in front of an unknown audience. But at any rate, sleeper trains are super expensive and not that comfortable. So I looked, because we're going home to California to see my parents in July. I just for fun was like, well, maybe we could take a train. That would probably just be one night. And it's like 4 times more expensive than flying.
Oh, wow.
And takes 4 times as long. So
yeah,
fly.
Well, I know for Christmas, one year, Scott and I bought my parents Amtrak tickets and I got like a little like battery powered train that it drove in a circle only. And if you put the batteries in wrong, it drove in the circle backwards. And it was really a weird little thing. But we bought them like gift certificates basically, because my dad had said he wanted to take a train, but they never used them.
Oh.
They were good for a year. And then my dad was finally like, okay, you need to take these back. We're not going to use them.
So you took them back and you didn't use them either?
No, because at the time we had 2 children under the age of 2 and there was just no...
I do understand that.
Getting to the grocery store was an adventure. Going on any kind of vacation, that wasn't going to happen. So
yes. Oh, okay. Well, so now, hang on. So we are live. Tamara, is there any chance you're watching us right now? You just need to click the link I sent you in the email.
While we're waiting, we'll say hi to Brooke and hi to Julie. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us. And we hope y'all had fun at our 50th show last week.
Was that just last week? Fun. That was last week.
That was last week. Yes.
Yeah. Seems like so long ago. Time is flying by. Dawn and I were just talking about that because I was like, I'll be much calmer next week. I just, except for those 2 books that I have to write this month. And she was like, this month, because this month is almost over. And I was like, what? No, it's not. It's not.
I mean, no, it's not. It's fine. It's all going to be fine. We're all
Everything
good.
will be fine.
Yes.
Or not.
Well, and I haven't known what day it was all week long because yeah, I was very sick over the weekend. I'm probably never eating seafood ever again, which will just be a tragedy, but I may have to go with that. And then we had people here working on the house, so there was no like normalcy to my schedule or anything. And so it was that, like yesterday, my husband, who has moved into my office, those of you who are used to watching the show will notice a new addition. There is now suddenly a Keurig behind me.
Tamara is here. I'm going to add her so she doesn't wonder where we are.
Hey.
Hi there.
There she is.
How are you?
Hi.
Good. How are you?
Good. I had a little bit of trouble because the browser.
No worries. We do this. I'm going to put us like that. Is that better?
Great. Hey.
Cool. Well, we were so excited to see you. I don't know if you heard us chatting before you popped on, but we have many questions.
Okay, great. I'm here. I'll try to help as much as I can.
Awesome. So first, will you tell us sort of who you are, where you are? I already mentioned that you're an Amtrak fellow because I'm so insanely excited about that because I actually applied and Amtrak evidently did not think I was a good fit. I don't know why, but I want to hear kind of just tell us what else, what do you write? Where do you live? What's your writing? I don't know. Just talk.
My background. Okay. So basically, my name is Tamara Lush, and right now I'm a full-time fiction writer. Until
Awesome.
2 months ago, I was a journalist with the Associated Press. And that was probably part of the reason why I was chosen for the Amtrak Fellowship, is because I was also doing some AP things there. And writing and doing projects on the train for 2 weeks. I also finished a fiction book while I was on the train, which was really exciting. I would encourage everybody to take a train and to write because it's super exciting. So
did you do like a cross-country sleeper kind of thing?
I did. Yeah. Yep. I stopped along the way. So I went from Florida to New York and then stayed in New York for a couple of nights and then went to Chicago and stayed there for a couple and visited friends and then went to see my dad in California and went down to LA and then LA over to New Orleans. I was on the road for like 2.5 weeks. It was really cool. It was just the best trip ever. So I would highly encourage everybody to do that. I was and still am writing romance then and now. So I'm a romance author and I've written romance serials and I'm also a traditionally published cozy mystery author. So
is that under the name Tamara Lush as well, or do you have another name?
No, the cozy mystery is under Tara Lush, Tara. That's actually what I'm working on now. And I'm actually one of my next mystery will be published in December from Crooked Lane Books. It's the second in a series. And I'm currently writing a first in series of another mystery. And then I have a book coming out in March of 2022 with Wattpad Books. Wattpad now publishes books. And that book will be it's on Wattpad. We've edited it, we've made it longer, and it will be coming out in book form, ebook and print book form.
Awesome. Well, we're definitely going to talk more about Wattpad in a little bit here because I know practically nothing. And Dawn, I feel like I'm just, because I got so excited that I'm like steamrolling the conversation.
No,
do you have questions for Tamara?
Hi, I'm Dawn.
This is Dawn.
I'm Dawn, and I've never been on a train. We were just discussing that, and Nancy finds that to be a travesty. So, but it's nice to meet you. I'm very
Does
glad
one
you're
of you
here
guys
with
have
us.
a speaker on? I hear us echoing.
I don't.
It may just be my weird, funky internet. This is what happens. Okay.
I'm looking at my thing. I don't think it's me.
Okay.
So
yeah, I think if Facebook's open or if YouTube is open, it will echo us.
I will try to, I'll turn off my other browser. I don't usually use other browsers other than Safari. So.
Oh, okay.
I'll try that. Maybe that's better. Is that better?
No, Yeah, StreamYard doesn't like Safari, I don't think.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Okay, now I
is that
don't hear
better?
it.
No,
I
we're
think
not
so,
echoing.
yeah.
Okay. Oh,
Okay.
okay. Sorry.
We have
okay.
it together now.
Okay.
Technical
So
difficulty.
it's very nice to meet you. We're very excited you're here, and we have about 90 bazillion questions.
Okay. Well, ask away.
Well, and
All right,
I don't
Nancy,
know
you
if
wanna
you
get
know, so we didn't really introduce Evident Ink. Tamara is not an Evident Ink client, but so we do this every week. We talk about story because it's Dawn and my sort of our passion. I also write as Delancey Stewart, and Dawn is the developmental editor here at Evident Ink, and then I do mostly the line editing, and then we have a proofreader, and so we do a lot of story things. But this is sort of our favorite thing to do. Dawn, you're still making funny faces.
Y'all just keep talking. It's fine.
Okay. I still hear me talking somewhere else, but that's okay.
Okay.
I don't hear an echo. So,
Okay. Well, so can you tell us, did you start? Now I'm freezing.
That kind of went in
My
and
internet
out.
sucks.
Okay.
So how did you get started writing serialized fiction?
Oh, well, that's a really interesting question, actually. So I wrote my first couple of romance novels, and they were published by Burroughs Publishing. I had a great experience with them. And then I decided to write a novella for a bunch of local Florida authors came together, and we decided to write like a high heat sort of erotic romance anthology. And so I wrote a 20,000 word short story that was called Tell Me a Story. And it was basically about a bookstore owner who meets a billionaire at something called Story Brothel, where she reads her erotic fiction for money to a sexy stranger. And they hook up and they have lots of fun, and it's awesome. And then I was like, I really like these characters. What can I do with them? And so I decided at that point that I wanted to self-publish that novella, and I wanted to make it a serial. I was reading a lot of Deborah Bladen. I don't know if that's how you say her name, but she a romance author who did some serial fiction about 7-8 years ago. She self-published. And so I decided that I wanted to write a serial based on these two characters. And so I did. I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
and now I have more questions. Where did you read her? Was she on Amazon or was she on Wattpad?
She was on Amazon, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so I decided to self-publish that, and I self-published it, and I self-published the 5 episodes of Tell Me a Story. And it did okay. I put it in Kindle Unlimited, and it did okay. And I don't think romance readers in Kindle Unlimited format at the time, or maybe it had passed its time, or maybe the time hadn't come. It didn't do as well as I had hoped. I had a beautiful cover and a beautiful concept, and it was super sexy. I think there are maybe some reasons why it didn't do it. It did okay. It did all right. And then I boxed it up, and I ended up doing a sequel to it about another character. And so when I started my next book, I was thinking about serial fiction, but I wrote it specifically in first person, like the other book. It was sexy and erotic romance. And someone told me about Radish at the time. That was 2017. Someone told me, I published Tell Me a Story in 2016 in installments. And in 2017, I decided that I knew I was publishing my next book, Constant Craving, in the fall of 2017, but I heard about Radish, and so I was like, well, why don't I publish it in serial form on Radish first? Let's try that as an experiment, because I had a day job and money wasn't my overriding concern. Just getting readers was. And I was on Wattpad. I had a couple of chapters of other books up on my other books up on Wattpad, and I thought it was a really interesting concept. And so I decided to publish serially on Radish, in part because the then owner of Radish, Sun Yoon, he actually had started with a journalism startup. And so he and I had a lot in common, and we talked. And so I was like, I'm going to just give this a shot. And so I did. And I actually ended up making a lot of money, so much that the Radish people were like, why don't you do a sequel to your book? And so I did. I actually ended up putting the hero's perspective, the hero's point of view, and then a third perspective with both points of view. And then that first book was self-published, and it ended up being a Rita finalist the next year, an RWA Rita finalist.
The book that you published serially on Radish and then made it a book, obviously it wouldn't be exclusive to Kindle Unlimited or anything.
Yeah, no, it wasn't in KU. It was entirely published on Radish. And so then it came out in Kindle Unlimited. And then I published. So initially when I wrote it, it was 2 points of view. But when I published it on Radish, it was just the heroine's point of view. And when I published it, the first installment on Kindle, on Amazon and widely, it was just the heroine's point of view. Then on Radish, I put the hero's point of view, the same story from the hero's point of view. And then I did a third season that took place after those 2 seasons and continued it with both points of view. Eventually, I published those other 2 like a year later widely. But for a while, it was exclusively on Radish. And so going full circle here, I decided that because there was a lot of synergy between Wattpad and Radish, I decided to publish some of Tell Me a Story on Wattpad to drive some of the readers to the paying book over on Radish. And then things kind of took off on Wattpad, and I was invited into the paid stories program. And then I decided, so some other stuff happened. So I don't know how much you want to know, but I mean, it was sort of unfolding. So I was invited into the paid stories program, and then I took some time off and I took a sabbatical from my day job and published some more romance. And then I decided to go back to my day job in October of 2019. And I was like, I'm just going to put all of my books on Wattpad. I need to focus on the election and covering the election because I was on like a political team doing reporting for the election. And I was about to do all these kick-ass reporting, these kick-ass stories for the election, and the pandemic hit, and I ended up just writing about the pandemic. So in the meantime, I put all of my stories on Wattpad, and because Wattpad was so great, and they gave me so much in marketing that I didn't have to do ads or promo other than some social media. And what that resulted in was one of my books getting a print deal with them. And that same book has a TV. I've signed an option for that book in Europe. Another book, Tell Me a Story, has also signed an option there. That's also in the paid program now. And there's other books that are possibly in the works with options. So there's just a lot going on with Wattpad, and I really like them. And I really love Radish too. I just haven't written, I wrote another serial exclusively for them at one point. But I haven't written a serial since that point. So it's just, I haven't had time. And plus I've kind of gone all in for the moment with my cozy mystery.
That's so interesting. Okay, so you have a lot of irons in the fire. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was part of the reason why I quit my job, because I was really burnt out with death and pandemic and destruction and politics. And I turned 50 and I'm like, this is the time. So I'm now doing this crazy thing, and here it is. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about the difference between writing a serialized fiction and writing like a regular series?
Right.
Because you talked about how like you wrote the actual book and then you wrote for the other points of view so give us a little bit of an idea. Since I'm the developmental editor, I'm all like story structure and how does this all work?
I did it right. I don't think I did it right, honestly.
Okay.
I think I have one book that's true serial structure, and that is called Love is the Drug. It's currently on Wattpad. That was the book I wrote for Radish first. It was on Radish for a couple of years. That is very similar to a telenovela. I consider serials to be very similar to telenovelas. Are you familiar with the telenovela concept versus soap opera concept?
I didn't know that they would be necessarily different. I would have assumed that.
Yeah, actually, so soap operas generally don't end. Soap operas just go on and on and on. And so, yeah, you can have a serial that goes on and on and on. There's plenty of them on Radish and on Wattpad that are just hundreds and hundreds of chapters. And that's okay. But a telenovela sometimes is long. Usually it's maybe a year or a season, but it has an ending. It usually ends in a wedding. It usually ends happy, but there's a lot of drama involved in that. And there's a lot of class. Usually it's a romance, but telenovelas are really specific to Latin America. And they generally, they have to do a lot of romance tropes like class differences, parents, bad boy, rich boy, good girl, poor
Have you seen
girl,
Jane the Virgin?
I haven't, but I know the story. It's
that's the only reason I know what you're talking about at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So I lived in Miami for many years. I've watched a lot of telenovelas. My husband's from Italy, so we watch a lot of programs from Europe. I watch a lot of Spanish dramas from Spain, and Italy has a very similar storytelling format as well. So I would say that my Tell Me a Story was, it definitely was, in the true sense of the word, it was a serial, because each novella had an arc. Each novella had a story arc. A couple of them, actually, I think I did it wrong, because it only was the third that I had a serious, heavy cliffhanger. And then the other two, the fourth had a cliffhanger, and then the fifth resolved the entire story. So I think I did that right. The other books I don't think worked. I did release some books that I wrote as books on Radish. They didn't do as well because they weren't written as serials. They were written as category length romances.
Yeah. And that's all I've ever done is released books that I've already written, and they don't do well. And I think it's what you said a second ago. There's no cliffhangers. I mean, there's the chapter hook,
sure,
but it's built to be, turn the page, not wait a week and be thinking about what's going on with these people. And do I really want to know? And
And so I should probably say that, like, there is definitely a difference between Radish and Wattpad. So Radish definitely is, and Kindle Vella, and to some extent Tapas as well. Those are true serial sites. Those are meant for writers to release quickly and, twice a week or more. Some people I know, release every day. If you've got a full manuscript, then why not? That works. Wattpad can be used that way, but it's also really a story sharing site. I get most of my reads from completed books. So, like, the series that didn't do great as a serial is doing really well there on Wattpad now, because all the books are there and the whole series is there, and people just binge the whole series just like they would in Kindle Unlimited. So Wattpad isn't entirely a serial site. I mean, it can be used that way, but that it isn't that entirely either.
Can you give us a little primer on Wattpad? In my head, I think, because it's been around for a while, I think, and I'm thinking of it in maybe its more original format. It was kind of just a sharing site. There's no compensation involved. Anyone could publish.
Anyone can publish.
How does it work in terms of, you're a very established author, so is there compensation involved? You mentioned that you were invited into a paid program. So can you talk a little bit about how people get started there?
Well, I was invited to be part of the beta program, so there were only like 12 of us to begin with. And now I think there are 200 of us who write, about 200 of us who write in English. There are other paid authors who in Spanish and other countries. And generally, if your books have a certain amount of reads, if you are really active in the community, I go to Wattpad a lot. I talk to my readers there a lot. I get their feedback. I comment on their feedback. I love my readers on Wattpad. I'm probably far older than the average demographic there, obviously. But my books have a certain amount of reads, and there's a form when you upload your book that if you're interested in other opportunities, like being featured on the homepage, or getting into paid stories, or having your book looked at by studios, you can flag your interest on that form. That's not a guarantee. It's not as easy to get into as something like Radish. Wattpad is pretty selective, and it really has to, a lot of their decisions about stories are obviously based on the algorithm and who's reading what. They can look at, wow, you've got a lot of readers in Germany. Maybe we should pitch this story to studios in Germany. They slice and dice it a lot. So that, I want to just tell you this really interesting piece of data. So a lot of people are asking about Vella and Kindle Vella and who the readers are. Well, I can tell you this, on Radish, on Wattpad, my readers there of the story that was a finalist in the Rita Awards, the RWA Rita Awards, only like 12% of my readers on that story are from the United States. Like a full 44% are from the Philippines. And these are people who have money and who are willing to unlock, and there's a ton of people from India. the United States isn't, for me personally, isn't really one of my top. I mean, it's a top location, but it sometimes isn't the top location. So I, that raises some questions in my mind about Kindle Vella.
Okay.
And who the audience for that will be?
Mhm.
Is it being
Right.
marketed specifically to the US right now?
Yes, it's only available to U.S. authors, and I think it's only available to U.S. readers, I believe. You
That's
might want to check
interesting.
that, at least initially. Like, I don't know if established romance authors, now I'm only talking about romance. I can't speak for any other genre, but I don't know if established romance readers are going to want to read in serial format. I haven't seen them be super excited about like serial format and ebook.
No,
So,
I
I
haven't
don't
either.
know.
I polled my reader group just sort of
Mhm.
informally about it, and they were like, I don't want to read that way. Like,
Right.
no, thank you.
Right. Like most older people don't want to read on their phone.
Yeah.
They don't want to read but my readers on Wattpad and Radish are like at the time I was releasing my serial Love is the Drug, I had a readers group for those people, and they would come on into my readers group and talk about the chapter when I released it. Like there would be entire discussions about that chapter.
Was the readers group on Radish?
No, it was on Facebook.
Oh, that's
But
interesting.
see, that's another thing too, is like my Wattpad readers, they are not on Wattpad. They are not interested in my newsletter. They don't sign up. They like younger readers. They don't mind the blending of genres. Like my books are really like chick lit with a little touch of literary fiction that's erotic and romantic. It's a romance because it ends happily, but it's a little more of a mashup than your average book. And the readers on Wattpad don't care. But I know enough to know that like I also didn't like take off in Kindle Unlimited. Like I'm no LJ Shen,
Yeah.
Like, and there are reasons why.
So another question, if someone wants to get started on Wattpad, and they already have books that are wide, do you just take a book that's already available elsewhere and put it on Wattpad? Does that cannibalize your paid sales at all? Or do you not put a paid book on Wattpad free? What's the strategy there?
I've taken one off and put it for free on Wattpad, and I've also kept it for sale and put it on Wattpad. I don't think the readership is the same personally.
Yeah.
I've not
You don't
seen
think
it.
there's crossover?
Not a lot. No.
So the reader that bought it at Kobo isn't going to be like, what? This book is free at Wattpad?
Probably not. No.
No.
I mean, I would say that it's a pretty good strategy. Like if you had like a fairly decent draft and put it on Wattpad and then wanted to make other, touches to that draft and then self-publish it, that might be a good way of doing it. The other way, and I tried this as well, is to have the non-steamy version on Wattpad and the steamy version on wide. That's another thing you can do.
So you're not using Wattpad to drive sales over to another platform at all.
No,
it's an audience in itself.
Yeah, I respect those readers there too much. That's not like I will tell them, hey, here's my cozy mystery. Obviously, I'm not putting my traditional cozy mysteries there.
Right.
I will tell them, hey, here's my cozy mystery under this other name. And some people will buy it and some people like it, but it's pretty much different. It's a different audience. And plus, the other thing is there's a substantial number of people on Wattpad who can't or are for whatever reason, are unable to buy from Amazon or another. Like one of my best readers is from Iran, and she's Amazon's banned where she lives. She can't buy from Amazon. So, she speaks like 4 languages, and she's Muslim, and she loves steamy books, and she used to live in Paris, and she can read on Wattpad and Radish all she wants. And there's plenty of people like that. Amazon is not the end all be all for the world. I mean, we think
it's actually really refreshing to hear alternatives because you get so much KU,
Yeah, I mean, that was, when I went back after my sabbatical, I had a choice to, put my books all in KU or put them up on Wattpad. And obviously, I would probably make more on KU, probably. Although now I have 10 books in the paid program. I do okay. But I didn't, when I went back after my sabbatical, I didn't need the money. So it wasn't like, I didn't want to give that much support to Amazon. And not that it means anything that I have my little protest, but
Sure.
Personally, I think it's great that Wattpad is providing an alternative ecosystem, and let's face it, I am never going to get a TV option in Europe from Kindle Unlimited. I'm never going to get any of that from Kindle Unlimited. I'm never going to get
that's super interesting. The
So,
additional exposure that you've been
right.
able to pull out of a platform that most people would say isn't viable for that kind of opportunity. I don't think most people know that that's there. That's really cool.
Yeah, I
That is
mean,
interesting.
Wattpad has sold several books to Hollywood and to producers in Canada and TV, and The Kissing Booth is one of them. Light as a Feather, After was a huge hit. Like, she's gone,
I was teaching high school. I was teaching high school when After hit. And like, I had girls coming in with that print book in their hand, and you would have thought they were carrying a bar of gold. That was the most amazing thing they had ever gotten. They were so excited.
Oh yeah, totally.
I also had I have a teenage daughter still, but she was a younger teen at that point and just was, oh my gosh. And then, but now what was kind of interesting was, I think she was 7th or 8th grade. And my high school kids were like, oh, miss, she can't read this. You can't let her read that.
That is the thing about Wattpad, is that I have some really young readers. And I'm like, oh gosh. But, not like I didn't read that kind of stuff when I was that age. So
Judy Blume. I mean, we were all there.
Exactly.
To shift gears just a little bit to talk about Radish, because what I heard you say earlier is, if you're writing it as for each, episode, is each one needs to have their own arc that happens, and then they end in a cliffhanger. And so when you're writing that, I'm curious if you write, if you sit down to write, do you sit down and write the entire book with that in mind? Or do you write 5 episodes and put those out and then continue, like a TV series would if they don't write the entire series from the beginning to end? So I'm a little curious about your process.
Well, my process was different when I was writing especially writing that particular serial, Love is the Drug, because I had a day job. So I did not want to get behind. I didn't want to get in a situation where, oh my God, the next chapter is due on Wednesday and I've got to get this out. So I would always try to be 2 or 3 ahead. I'm pretty much of a plotter. So I had the whole thing plotted. Generally, when I sit down to write, I have the whole thing plotted out anyway. So I have a roadmap of where I'm going. And I think it's really important for serials that you do know where you're going, almost to the point where the cliffhangers. It just makes it a lot easier if you know the cliffhangers that you're working toward in each chapter and in each part of the book. It really helps. A lot of action is really helpful for a serial.
Well, and my other question was going to be, I know you said you could only talk about romance. If you've seen other genres, which genres you've seen be very successful in this, and which genres you don't think lend themselves to this? It doesn't really sound to me, just off the top of my head, that traditional women's fiction would lend itself very well to this kind of thing.
Probably.
But maybe, or lit fic. But maybe action thrillers or suspense, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that mysteries would work. But I think that it has to be written with a certain audience in mind. I mean, at least on Radish and Wattpad, okay, I have a free cozy mystery. It's a newsletter magnet, which I'm actually taking down because my publisher has interest in publishing it. So I'm going to take that down, but it's on Wattpad. And let's just put it this way. I put up my Love is the Drug, which is the premise of Love is the Drug on Wattpad, is about a guy who deals ecstasy, and he dates his former best friend's little sister, who's 7 years younger than him, and she just turned 18. And a lot of crazy stuff happens, crazy. That had 1 million reads within 6 weeks. I have my cozy mystery, which is about an early 20s woman who runs an ice cream van and solves a murder, and that has 16,000 reads after a year. So You would think mystery would, and it ends, every chapter ends in a cliffhanger. It's like it's a novella. It's like fast moving.
It just doesn't work though.
But it doesn't work. And so
what about
thrillers might, but if it's a political thriller, like maybe, I don't know. I can't, it would be nice if it did, but I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
Have you seen any fantasy or sci-fi be successful that way?
Totally.
Okay.
There's a lot of people who do, I don't read those genres, but there's a lot of people in the paid program who write those genres, and paranormal is really big. People like on Wattpad, people love werewolves and they love vampires. And same on Radish,
I mean, I was going to say, of course they do. Yeah. Who doesn't love a good werewolf?
Really, it's always funny because sometimes I see my books being tagged under like werewolf, and I'm like, but there's no werewolves. So
They're like, maybe that's supposed to be a hint. We would like for there to be werewolves here.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they would. I've thought about writing vampire for Wattpad just because it would be fun.
Yeah.
So I know that on Wattpad you get a lot of reader interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have two questions about that. One, do you let that guide the way you're doing the story at all? Or do you just kind of like enjoy the interaction and then go on? If they're like, oh my gosh, is this person going to get with this person? Or and you're like, well, they weren't, but maybe.
Well, all of my books there, with the exception of one, the very first one I wrote for the paid, they actually, Wattpad actually wanted me to write a new book for when I went into the paid program when it was beta. They wanted me to write a new book. And I was like, what book am I going to write? And I actually ended up writing like the relatives to another book that was popular, the one that is ending up being a print book. So I guess I did take some reader interaction, but I didn't really incorporate it. I don't know, like the bulk of the other books were done. All of the other books were done. So no, I didn't.
So it wouldn't be your expectation that the author take the reader comments into consideration?
Not that I've seen. I think some people do. I just don't, because my books were all done before I put them on Wattpad. So I wasn't about to change them. Even though maybe I released them in serial format, they were done. So no.
And is there any reader interaction on Radish, on that format?
There is, yeah. You can comment on Radish now. Mm-hmm. The comments weren't, when I was publishing on Radish, the comments weren't as in the same format. You could only comment for like 2 hours or 3 hours after a chapter was released, and then the comments would go away. So it was different than it is now. I haven't published since the new comment.
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
definitely.
I love the comments. I love the Wattpad comments. Like I tune in a couple of times a day and look at what everybody's saying. I love it. And the best, and the other crazy thing about Wattpad is that it, like, people have really, there's a lot of synergy with TikTok now. So like some random person that I wasn't even following on TikTok, like put up a screenshot of my book, and it's just gotten like thousands of reads in the last 3 days. It's hilarious. Awesome. Yeah, it's hilarious. Yeah, and there's like a whole chat. Did you come here from TikTok? Yeah, I'm here from TikTok. It's hilarious. And then I ended up asking them, like, which TikTok did you see this? And somebody responded, so I was able to see that. It was just hilarious.
So cool.
Yeah, yeah.
That is, yes, as I have a college-age daughter right now, and TikTok is life. So yes, I totally understand the TikTok would be so cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely an avenue to sort of promote your serials if you feel comfortable with it. And there are ways to do it. Like, I don't particularly like going on TikTok myself. Like because I'm obvious, like I said, I'm much older than the average Wattpad reader. So I don't want to do anything to dissuade them from reading my books if they see me and they're like, oh my God, this, because they have, like, I have a couple of books with older characters, like 30s and 40s. And some of the readers who are teenagers are like, oh my God, she's an oldie. And I'm like, get the light alert,
Excuse
you
me?
know, like, just signing up for my AARP card over here. So I try to not highlight my age.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, so what advice would you give someone who is looking at starting out in, and it almost sounds like Wattpad is not necessarily serialized.
No, I mean, some people, like, you can follow along as people. I mean, certainly there are plenty of people who write, you know, live or release live or release their stories in serial format. So I mean, my biggest piece of advice would be to read the popular books on Radish and Wattpad. Like that would be my, you know, like there's no substitution for it. I would also, like, if you're in romance, I would also look, like, there are some great serial writers like Beth Carey. She wrote a couple traditionally published serials. She's amazing. Like, she does it so well. I would look to her older books. I'm trying to think, you know, lots of books were released as serials. Bonfire of the Vanities. Sure. Bonfire of the Vanities by Tom Wolfe was released as a serial in Rolling Stone. But I would say, if you're writing genre fiction, especially romance, to look at some of the top titles on Radish and Wattpad. Radish is especially good because Radish has their own branded serials. So they actually do a writer's room and they hire writers and they have these long serials and they are plotted with serial fiction in mind. So if you can find those, there's one about doctors, there's one about a BDSM club in Miami. Those are all good to look at and to study.
Yeah. Very cool.
And what would you recommend they avoid? Somebody who's looking to get started with this. I'm sorry. What would you recommend avoiding?
I would not go on Wattpad thinking you're going to make money. I would not go on Wattpad thinking that you're going to. I think the readers there are extremely savvy and they know when they're being marketed to.
Sure.
They're young and they're just very savvy. And I think that they see when somebody is just doing something to, like, I've seen other authors who maybe are popular on KU who think they're going to go onto Wattpad and either get a paid deal or they think they're going to drive readers to KU. And it just kind of falls flat because people can see, like, we all know the KU books that are churned out by ghostwriters and they kind of suck. We know that. Like, we all know that. Like, that's what not half, but an unfortunate chunk of KU is about. And I just think that the readers on Wattpad are savvier than that. And they can tell when your story has heart and passion. And I would also say that don't be too, you know, and I know you guys are both editors. I use editors for my books. So this is a double-edged sword. All of my books have been edited. And, you know, even the serial on Radish, they hired an editor for me. That was a special case. But all of my books, because they were self-published, they had content edit and they had developmental edits and they had copy edits. Plus, I'm also a professional journalist. I've been writing for 30 years. My grammar's pretty good. So, you know, that said, yes, you should do that if you can. But some of the most popular books on Wattpad, some of them that have, you know, done really well and gotten movie deals, maybe aren't the most solid with grammar. It's about heart and passion and storytelling. And if the storytelling shines through, it doesn't necessarily need to be perfect. It's a great place to really write what's in your heart.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Dawn, do you have anything else? I feel like we've kind of blown through our plan.
Sorry.
Yes.
No, I mean, like we've.
No, she means we covered everything.
Not like we
covered everything.
Just thrown it out the window. No, I think
you haven't seen our other shows. Nancy struggles sometimes with cliches. There was the nailing of a horse at one point. So just
I mix metaphors, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
Okay, so you kind of already covered this already, but the advantage of you being here, where can we find your books? Where can readers find out more about you?
Well, you can find me on Wattpad at Tamara Lush, no space, TAMARALUSH. That's the same as my website, tamaralush.com. My cozy mysteries are TaraLush, TARALUSH.com. Those are on Amazon. At the moment, I only have one title on Amazon, and that is a story in Best Women's Erotica. I do have some audiobooks on Amazon and on iBooks, but other than that, I don't have anything in my name. Everything is on Wattpad, and you can read it there. If you're looking for an example of something that I wrote as a true serial, Love is the Drug is free on Wattpad, and that might be good to check out.
Awesome.
Nice. Awesome.
Thank you.
Goes to Wattpad immediately.
Yeah. I know what I'm going to be doing here in about 10 minutes when we're done here. So, but we really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. This has been super informative. And we had like a million questions, and I'm sure a million more will probably pop up, but this has been great.
Yeah, it's neat just to have kind of a different perspective. We focus so much on self-publishing and romance, especially, and so much on KU that it's really just nice to hear that there are other avenues if you really just want to tell a story and that you can make money doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And I know a lot of Wattpad people who are on completely other sites that I'm not on. And they have Patreon, and they have a whole, it's a whole other wing of self-publishing and indie publishing that, there are people who are far, far more into it. I think if there are a lot of the the science fiction people and the fantasy people, there are people on Wattpad who have entire cottage industries around their books. There's actually a guy named Rob Thier. He used to publish, I think he still does. He publishes first on Radish, this is another strategy. Sorry to bring this up so late.
No, you're fine.
He publishes on Radish, and it's a paid, people have to pay for that chapter. And then a certain amount of time, like a month or so later, he publishes it for free on Wattpad. And he's made a ton of money on Radish. He has millions of reads. He actually writes historical fiction from a woman's point of view. You wouldn't think it works, but he honestly, he's a German guy. He actually has he has a whole name for his readers. They're called Ifrits, which is some reference in the story. I haven't read all of it. I started to read, he has entire Twitter feeds for fanatical. And he also has books published on Amazon, but people go right to Radish, and he made some astronomical amount of money one year on Radish, just because people loved his books and his stories. And he had 5 books in this with the same characters, but they all had millions of reads, and people love him.
Wow.
Love. Yeah.
And that's historical fiction. I wouldn't have thought that would do well.
I think it's called the Stone and the Sword, or I don't know.
Fantasy.
Their. I mean, there might be some magic in it. It's adventure, but it was very not. I don't think there's any sex in it. I think it's all very chaste. I think.
Yeah.
At least what I read. So you don't automatically have to have high heat in order to succeed. If you really capture a group of those readers, they will stay with you.
Yeah.
And they will read everything that you write.
Awesome.
Very nice. This has been fascinating.
Ask me any questions. If anybody wants to hit me up on Facebook or wherever, feel free to ask me any questions.
I appreciate that. Well, we get a few live viewers, and then we get a lot of people telling us that they watch later. So questions may come up over the next week or so. And this does turn into a podcast. It sort of all happens behind the scenes automatically. I set it all up a long time ago, and now I don't even know how it works. But so that'll be out there too.
Okay.
We're magically in different places.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for taking the time
to
hang out with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being here, and thank you to our people who show up live. And we only have 2 shows left before we're going on summer hiatus.
Yes. So Dawn and I are both moving this summer. So
yes.
Good luck.
Let that house fun begin.
So next week we will be talking about indie versus traditional publishing, which this has been fabulous for, because you're giving us so many other avenues to discuss, and that's great. And
Definitely.
So we'll be talking about indie versus traditional, what the pathways are, what the steps are, what you need, what you don't need, that kind of thing. And then on May 20th, we will have Nancy here as her alter ego, Delancey Stewart, and with Marika Ray talking about co-writing. And then we are done, because I have a child graduating from high school, and we are both trying to move, and summertime. So that's what we have coming up.
Nice.
And we'll see you back here. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.